What's a subtle sign that someone is a good person but doesn't want to show it? Our school janitor, Mr. Pete, was basically a human thundercloud. He'd stomp around the hallways with his massive key ring, jingling like he was announcing his arrival to scare kids away. Everyone thought he hated us. He'd literally shush you for breathing too loud near the library wing. I remember freshman year when Jenna accidentally dropped her entire binder in the math hallway. Papers everywhere. Mr. Pete appeared out of nowhere, scowled at the mess, and just muttered, "Pick it up." Before walking away, no help, no sympathy, just pure grumpiness. He had these weird rules, too. You couldn't walk through the C-wing during lunch. He'd literally block the entrance with his cart and give you this death stare until you turned around. Kids started calling it the Pete Zone. We thought he was just being a control freak about his freshly mopped floors. Then there was the incident with Brady, our school's golden boy quarterback. This dude thought he owned the place. He'd shove freshmen into lockers for fun, and teachers would just laugh it off because he was heading to state. One Tuesday after English, Brady's shoulder checked me so hard I went flying into the wall. My phone exploded into about 15 pieces across the tile floor. I was sitting there picking up the remnants when Mr. Pete appeared with his mop bucket. He looked at me, looked at the phone pieces, then looked down the hall where Brady was high-fiving. His buddies didn't say a word, just started mopping around me like I wasn't even there. The next morning, I opened my locker and nearly had a heart attack. There was a phone. Not my exact model, but the same brand, same color, just sitting there with a tiny yellow sticky note that had my name written in this chicken scratch handwriting. No explanation, no signature, nothing. I asked around, but nobody knew anything. The office said they didn't have any lost phones turned in. It was like it materialized out of thin air. Weird things started happening after that. Brady, who used to terrorize kids daily, suddenly couldn't seem to find his usual victims. Every time he'd corner someone, a teacher would mysteriously appear, needing help with something, or the fire alarm would go off for a drill. Or someone would spill something in the hallway requiring immediate cleanup. My friend Austin got shoved into his locker by some senior, and the next day, that same senior got called to the principal's office. Turns out, someone had anonymously reported him with exact timestamps and video evidence. The senior got suspended and had to do community service. Kids started whispering about this mysterious guardian angel who was protecting everyone. Some thought it was a teacher. Others figured it was student council trying to clean up the school. I had my suspicions, but couldn't prove anything until one night in November when I had to go back for my jacket after debate practice. The school was basically empty except for the security guard and apparently Mr. Pete, who was still there at like 7 p.m. I was walking past the main office when I saw him through the window. He was sitting at one of the computers watching security footage. But here's the crazy part. He had a whole system, sticky notes everywhere. Some said things like, "Kid looks scared," or "Check this tomorrow," or "Talk to Mrs. Rodriguez about Hall." Duty. I watched him for probably 10 minutes. He'd see something concerning, write a note, stick it to a file folder, then keep watching. This wasn't just casual browsing. This was a full investigation operation. That's when it hit me. The phone wasn't random kindness. The mysteriously timed teacher appearances weren't coincidence. Mr. Pete had been watching everything. He'd seen Brady destroy my phone and decided to fix it. He'd been tracking every bully, every incident, every kid who needed help. The C-Wing rule suddenly made sense, too. That's where most of the bullying happened because it was hidden from teacher view, but not from the security cameras, and definitely not from Mr. 2. Our school janitor, Mr. Pete, was basically a human THUNDERCLOUD. Heavy boots, heavy frown. That massive keyring jingling down the hallways like a warning bell. He'd bark at kids for leaning against lockers, glare if you so much as whispered near the library. Nobody liked him. Freshman year, Jenna dropped her entire binder and the math wing papers everywhere. Mr. Pete appeared out of nowhere, scowled at the mess, muttered, "Pick it up," then walked away. No help, no sympathy, just pure grumpiness. He had these strange rules too. You couldn't walk through the C-wing during lunch, ever. He'd block it with his mop cart and give you this dead-eyed stare until you turned around. We called it the Pete Zone, like he was guarding it just to be a jerk. Then there was Brady, our school's golden boy. Quarterback, teachers adored him. He shoved freshmen into lockers for fun, and nobody ever stopped him. One Tuesday after English, Brady shoulder-checked me so hard I slammed into the wall. My phone shattered across the floor. I sat there, humiliated, picking up pieces when Mr. Pete rounded the corner. He looked at me, looked at the shards, looked down the hall where Brady was laughing with his buddies. Then he just started mopping. Around me, silent. No comfort, no anger, just a mop and that blank stare. The next morning, I opened my locker and froze. Inside was a phone. Same brand, same color as mine. Not new, but in perfect condition. Sticky notes stuck to it in messy handwriting, "For you." No explanation. No signature after that. Weird things started happening. Brady, who used to terrorize kids daily, suddenly couldn't find anyone to pick on. Every time he tried, a teacher would just happen to show up, or the fire alarm would mysteriously trigger, or someone would spill something, forcing him to back off. Austin, a quiet kid, got shoved into a locker by some senior. The next day, that senior got called to the principal's office, suspended, apparently. Someone anonymously submitted video footage, Jack's times, crystal clear evidence. Whispers started. Someone's watching out for us. A teacher, student. Counsel me. I had my suspicions. One night in November, I forgot my jacket after debate practice. The school was empty, echo quiet. As I walked past the office, I saw him, Mr. Pete. He was sitting at a computer surrounded by sticky notes. The monitor glowed in the dark office. He was watching security footage, rewinding, zooming in, scribbling things down. I pressed closer. Hidden. The notes said things like, "Kid looks scared, check tomorrow. Brady near lockers again. Talk to Mrs. Rodriguez, re-hall duty." It wasn't random. This wasn't casual. He was running a full-on operation for 10 minutes. I stood there watching him. He wasn't just cleaning floors. He was tracking bullies, spotting scared kids, creating plans. The C-wing rule suddenly clicked. It wasn't about wet floors. That wing was a blind spot. No teachers, no cameras. Bullies loved it. He wasn't keeping us out for no reason. He was stopping them. I left without saying a word, heart pounding the next week. Brady shoved a freshman. Before his hand even left the kid's backpack, the vice principal appeared like magic. Brady stammered, got detention, and for the first time ever, he looked nervous. By spring, Brady barely spoke above a whisper. The bullying stopped. Completely. I never told anyone what I saw. But sometimes, when I passed Mr. Pete in the hall, I'd nod. Just a little, and maybe it was my imagination, but once, just once, he nodded back, no smile. No words. Just a flicker of recognition. Years later, after graduation, I came back to visit. The halls looked smaller. Brady was long gone. So was Mr. Pete. But on the main office bulletin board, there was a photo. Him holding a plaque. Employee of the Year. I stared at it for a long time. Maybe he didn't want anyone to know. Maybe he liked being the THUNDERCLOUD, but I knew better. Mr. Pete wasn't scary. He was our quiet guardian story too at dinner. My family said I should donate my apartment for my always favorite cyst. I said, absolutely not. Dad flicked marinara at me as my sister went live, yelling drama as usual. I sat in silence until Grandpa entered, opened his briefcase, and everything changed. I think it's only fair, my mother said, carefully slicing into her lasagna like she wasn't detonating a bomb at the dinner table. You have no kids, no responsibilities. You live alone. I paused mid-chew, my fork halfway to my mouth. What? I asked, even though I heard her loud and clear. My sister Melanie didn't even look up from her phone. She was scrolling Instagram, probably watching her own live stream numbers climb. Dad wiped his mouth and leaned back, his belly pressing against the edge of the table. What your mother's trying to say? He added in that faux reasonable tone. I'd grown up fearing. Is that your apartment would help Melanie get back on her feet? You mean you want me to give her my home? Melanie looked up thin, eyes sharp. Just until I get settled. It's not a big deal. You're always acting like you're some kind of martyr. I stared at her. You're 34. You've never paid rent. You haven't held a job longer than 3 months. And you want my apartment? She has kids. Mom said like that fact was a trump card. You're alone. I chose to live alone. I worked 3 jobs to buy that apartment. I don't know. Can you not be so dramatic? Melanie cut in and then click. She angled her phone up, hit the red button. Hey guys, going live, dinner drama. As usual. My brother's being selfish again. You're live streaming this? I blinked. You always make it about you, she muttered, fake crying into the camera. All I asked for was some support. A roof over my kids' heads, and he's acting like I asked for his. Kidney. Dad scoffed. Maybe we should have had this conversation before dinner. You always get defensive. Then it happened. He flicked a clump of marinara from his spoon at me. It landed on my shirt, hot, sticky, red. I'm not doing this, I muttered, grabbing a napkin. No, sit down, Mom snapped. We're not finished. Ma-san, you owe this family some gratitude. If it weren't for us, I'd tuned her out. My heart was pounding. Melanie was still alive. I could hear the comments dinging in real time. Oh my God, her brother sounds like a totally unhinged one. Read. Can't believe she has to beg for help. I wanted to scream instead. I sat. Then, right as I opened my mouth to respond, the front door creaked open. Heavy footsteps. Silence fell. Grandpa had arrived, every head turned. He walked in with his usual slow, heavy steps. Same brown coat, same cane. And then, with a grunt, he dropped an old briefcase onto the table between the lasagna and the garlic bread. Click, dot, snap. He opened it, and everything changed. The table was frozen. Even Melanie stopped live streaming. Grandpa never brought that briefcase anywhere. The last time I saw it was at Grandma's funeral when he handed out notarized letters and quietly paid for everything without saying a word. It was old leather scratched at the corners, brass latches slightly rusted, and now it was open on the dinner table. Like a bomb had just been planted in the middle of our family chaos. What's this? Mom asked, trying to laugh. Dad, is this really necessary? Grandpa didn't answer. He pulled out a stack of papers, perfectly aligned, clipped, highlighted. I wasn't going to say anything, he began, his voice rough with age, but sharp like a blade. But watching your father flick sauce at his own son while Melanie humiliates him in front of strangers on the internet. I've had enough. Melanie rolled her eyes. Oh God, here we go. Grandpa's gaze cut to her like a whip. You be quiet. You've done enough damage. She shrank slightly in her chair. He turned to me. You paid for that apartment yourself. I nodded, unsure where this was going. 3 jobs? No. Loans? I've been there 5 years now. Grandpa nodded slowly. Ah. And in all that time, has anyone in this room helped you with a single bill? Not once, I said. He pulled out a second folder and handed it to me. This is a copy of the trust fund I set up 10 years ago. It was meant to be split equally between you and Melanie when I passed. I figured, let life decide who deserves what. Dad snorted. We don't need to talk about inheritance during dinner. We do now. Grandpa snapped. Because I've changed it? Everyone went still. What is this? Melanie barked. I watched you for years, Grandpa said, ignoring her. You leeching off. Everyone? You quitting every job, blaming bosses, boyfriends, pregnancies, your brother. He never asked for anything. Not once. Because he's your favorite, she yelled. No, because he's a man. Grandpa paused. A man doesn't beg. A man works. A man endures. And you're a child in a woman's body, playing victim on the internet. Melanie looked like she might explode. Grandpa turned to my dad. On you? I remember when you were like your son. Proud, honest. Now you let your daughter turn. On you soap opera for followers. Dad, this is ridiculous. My father said he's being dramatic. He's always been dramatic. No, Grandpa said firmly. You want dramatic? Let me give you dramatic. He reached into the briefcase one more time and pulled out a manila envelope. Tossed it on the table. That, he said, is a signed legal transfer. As of today, the house you live in, the one I bought for you in 1986, belongs to your son. Silence. You could hear the tick of the old kitchen clock above the fridge. What? My mom whispered. I gave you 30 years to grow up, Grandpa said, standing. You failed. You let your daughter mooch, your wife manipulate, and your son sit there being pelted with marinara like a clown. So, I gave the house to the one person who deserves something. My hands were shaking. I reached for the envelope, but couldn't move. Melanie stood. You're punishing me because I asked for help. No, Grandpa said coldly. I'm punishing you for assuming you were entitled to it. She glared at me. You're seriously going to let him do this? I looked her dead in the eyes. You live-streamed a personal moment just to make me look bad. You called me selfish, dramatic, useless in front of strangers. All because I said no to giving up my home for your third attempt at getting back on your feet. Yeah, I'm going to let him do this. Melanie turned to our parents. Say something. But they just stared at the table. You made this mess. I added, standing now. You made a mess, and now you want me to clean it up. That's been the pattern since. We were kids. I turned to Grandpa. Why now? He smiled faintly. Because I needed you to see it with your own eyes. The way they treat you and to remind you that you're not crazy for thinking it's wrong. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. Melanie snatched her phone. Fine, I'll go. I'll tell my followers how my family betrayed me. You mean your 4-bot accounts? Grandpa said, good luck with that. And with that, he turned, came tapping, and walked out. That's when I saw the final paper inside the briefcase. An eviction notice. Not for me, for them. Melanie lunged for the paper, grabbing it with trembling fingers. Her expression changed as her eyes darted across the lines. First confusion, then horror. This is dated last week, she gasped. I've been watching from the sidelines long enough, Grandpa said from the doorway. This didn't start at dinner. This started the day your father told his son to sleep on a couch so you could have space. It started the first time your mother said, Melanie just needs a little help. This family has been bleeding him dry for years. I've had enough. You can't evict us, Mom blurted, her voice rising, panic creeping in. You can't just hand over the house and kick us out like we're nothing. I can't, and I did, Grandpa growled. And let me be very clear. You have 30 days. Dad stood now, chest puffed, trying to salvage the last pieces of pride. This is my home. I raised my kids here. You can't just rip it away because you're upset over some pasta sauce. Raise them, Grandpa barked a bitter laugh. You let your daughter broadcast a private family conflict for online attention, and you call that parenting. Mom clutched the back of her chair. He's exaggerating. This is just he's trying to punish us. No, I said, voice louder than I expected. He's finally giving me the protection I never had. I looked at my parents, at Melanie. Their faces suddenly unfamiliar, like cardboard cutouts of people I once knew. You called me selfish for not giving away my apartment. But you never asked why I needed to live alone, why I worked 16-hour days, why I stopped coming around. Melanie scoffed. You always think you're the victim. I am. I snapped. You know what it felt like when you crashed your car and they asked me to pay the insurance increase? When you bought concert tickets on Mom's credit card and I had to cover the balance to keep her from tanking her score. Melanie's face palled. Dad opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. And you, Dad, you used to tell me that family looks out for each other. But every time I said no, you call me cold. When I lost my job during the pandemic, you said maybe this will humble you. And then you asked for help with your property taxes. I didn't know, he started, but I wasn't done. And Mom, remember when I was sick and you said you didn't have time to pick up my meds because you were watching Emma and Lily? Not because you wanted to help Melanie, but because she was out getting her nails done. Mom flinched. I turned to Melanie, now visibly fuming. You have lived in 5 different apartments in 7 years. You've burned through every job, every boyfriend, every dollar anyone's given you. You post about toxic people online, but you are the storm everyone drowns in. Melanie's voice broke. You think you're so much better than us, don't you? No, I said, but I'm finally tired of pretending we're equals. She grabbed her phone. I swear if you think people are going to support this, oh, go ahead. Go live. Show them the eviction notice. Show them how your brother, who you mocked and humiliated, paid for your groceries for 6 months without you even knowing. Show them how you demanded his home while streaming his reaction for views. Do it. I'll screen record the whole thing and post the receipts. She froze, her face contorted, not with guilt, but fear. Fear that the narrative wasn't hers anymore. You're a coward, she whispered. You twist every situation to suit yourself, I replied calmly. But not anymore. You don't get to be the victim in a story you created. I turned back to Grandpa. Thank you. He gave me a nod. It's about time someone flipped the script. There was a long silence. Dad sat back down, like the weight of the moment crushed him. Mom wiped at tears, still trying to look like the wounded party. Melanie quietly picked up her purse and phone, hands shaking. Then Melanie stood. Well, she said, voice cold as ice. Guess I'll go start packing. No one answered. She turned to our parents. You coming? They didn't move. Didn't even look at her. It hit me then. They had no plan, no backup. For all their noise, for all their righteous manipulation, they thought I'd fold again. But not this time. This time, the story changed. They had built their lives on the assumption that I would always be there, that I'd always pick up the tab, shut up during the insults, and smile through the guilt. But I wasn't that person anymore. They'd flick marinara at the wrong guy. 30 days passed. Not that I was counting. They didn't pack right away. Of course, they didn't single quotes. Melanie kept acting like it was a bluff. Like Grandpa would swoop back in with some heartfelt apology and say it was all a test. Mom kept wandering around the house like a ghost, setting the table for 4, even when no one was coming. Dad kept pretending nothing had changed. Mowing the lawn, fixing the fence, mumbling to himself about waiting this out. But I wasn't bluffing. The day after dinner, I filed the transfer papers with the county. I changed the name on the deed, on the utilities, on the mailbox, and I told them in writing that they had until the end of the month. No extensions, no exceptions. Week 2, Melanie tried to play the kid's card. "Emma and Lily don't have anywhere to go," she said, arms crossed in the kitchen, leaning against the fridge. "Like a soap opera villain, you're kicking out children." "You mean the ones you let scream at midnight while you were watching TikTok in the bathtub?" I asked flatly. "The ones I babysat for free while you were getting your hair bleached and your brows microlated." She didn't answer. Instead, she slammed the door and posted a story kicked out by my own brother. "Guess blood means nothing," with a sad selfie, no less. The comments were brutal, but not for me. Apparently, word had gotten out, and not just from me. Someone from Grandpa's poker group had shared the story, and Melanie's usual parade of sympathy, likes turned into a storm of "You seriously tried to take his apartment and wait. Weren't you live when this started?" By week 3, Dad tried guilt. "This family is broken now," he said one morning, sitting on the porch with his old mug. "All because you couldn't share." "Share," I repeated. "Like when I shared my paycheck with you 3 Christmases in a row. When I shared my savings to cover Melanie's bounced rent check. When shared my time fixing your gutters while she recovered from a breakup with a guy she dated for 6 weeks. He stared into his coffee, said nothing. Mom tried a different angle. "I've been feeling sick lately," she said quietly one evening. "I don't know where we'll go." "You had 30 years, I replied. "And you chose to prioritize the one child who never gave anything back. You ignored me. You let her talk over me, take from me, mock me. And when I finally said no, once you acted like I'd committed murder." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't budge. "You said you were sick," I continued, "but not once did you ask how I was. Not when I lost my job, not when I had to sell my car, not when I moved twice in a year just to stay afloat." By week 4, the eviction notice arrived, served officially. And that's when everything collapsed. Melanie moved out first. Not with dignity, of course. She filmed it, sobbing on live, panning the camera across the boxes. "This is what happens when family turns on you," she sniffed. "When people care more about property than people." But the comments were merciless. "Didn't you try to take his apartment? Maybe try working for once." Even a former friend of hers commented, "You lived rent-free for years. Grow up." She went viral for all the wrong reasons. Within a week, her sponsorships, the few she had, dropped her. One of her clips even made it to Reddit's R, entitled "People with the Title." Influencer sister demands brother give up his home, gets evicted instead. Dad left the night before the final move, out. No goodbyes, no closure, just a quiet slam of the door. Mom stayed until the very last morning, wandering the halls like a woman who couldn't believe the lights were going out when she finally stepped outside. Dragging a suitcase behind her, she turned to me. "Are you happy now?" "No," I said, "but I'm free." She didn't reply. Just walked down the driveway, shoulders hunched like the world finally felt heavy. I stood there a long time after they left. The silence was strange. No yelling, no guilt trips, no manipulation, just me and the house. My house. I walked room by room, taking it all in. The floor still creaked. The kitchen faucet still dripped. The walls were still painted that same pale beige. My parents never got around to changing. But it felt different because for the first time, I wasn't a guest. I wasn't a tenant. I wasn't the family ATM. I was the owner. That night, I sat on the porch with Grandpa. He brought over some old wine and 2 glasses. "You did it," he said. "Most people never do." "Do what?" "Break the chain." I didn't answer. Just stared out at the quiet street. You know, your father was a good man once, he added. But he let comfort rot him. He chose easy lies over hard truths. You didn't? I sip my wine. You think he'll ever come around? Grandpa shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. That's not your responsibility anymore. We sat in silence a while. Then he reached into his coat and handed me something. A key to the cabin, he said. In Vermont, it's yours now. I stared at it. I thought you were leaving it too. To your father. Grandpa snorted. Not anymore. I'm done rewarding the loudest mouths. You earned this. I swallowed hard. Thank you. He clinketed his glass to mine. To clean slates, he said. To freedom, I replied. 3 months later, the silence in this house isn't empty. It's sacred, for the first time in my adult life. I can hear myself think without background noise of obligation or manipulation. May. No one hovering near the kitchen doorway, waiting to casually bring up money. No one storming upstairs because I didn't drop everything to fix their latest disaster. It's just me and Ray. Ray's a golden retriever I adopted 2 months ago. Gentle eyes, always a little too happy to see me, like I've just come home from war every time I walk through the door. He doesn't ask for much, just walks, food, and a warm corner. But what he gives in return is more than anyone in my family ever did. Loyalty, real, unconditional loyalty. I painted the living room a deep forest green dot, replaced the beige curtains with something bold and patterned. Something that said, this space belongs to someone now. I threw out the chipped plates Mom never let us replace because they still work. Fine, and bought a new set in midnight blue. It's strange how these small things feel like rebellion, or maybe they feel like healing. I even cleared out the attic, found boxes with my name on them, old report cards, dusty trophies, letters I wrote. To Santa, none of them ever made it onto the fridge or the mantel. But they were here, hidden, silent testaments to a version of me they never celebrated, only tolerated. I burned a few, kept some. Symbolism matters. Melanie texted again last week. This time longer, more raw. I messed up. You were right. I thought. If I made myself the victim, people would protect me. But they didn't. They saw through me. Everyone did. But I don't want to lose the only person who ever actually cared. Please, not for me. For Emma and Lily, I sat with that message for a full hour. I reread it line by line. I imagined the version of myself from a year ago. The version who would have replied in 5 minutes, offering money, advice, or even a babysitting schedule. But that version of me had been buried the night marinara hit my chest and my sister went live for clout. So, I responded differently this time. I hope you figure things out, but I won't let you use the girls to pull me back in. When you're ready to talk with accountability, not guilt, maybe then. She left me unread. I haven't heard from her since. My parents still silent. Grandpa told me they rented a modest 2-bedroom apartment out near the old strip mall. Porch. No backyard. Dad's been working part-time maintenance, and Mom apparently started making candles to sell online. There's some poetic justice in it. Not because I want to see them struggle, but because maybe now they'll understand what I've carried for years. Responsibility tastes different when you're the one swallowing it. Grandpa still visits every Friday. Evening, he brings pastries and strong opinions. We sit on the porch together, sipping coffee or cheap wine, watching the neighborhood change as the seasons do. You broke the chain, he said once quietly. What chain? The one where the strongest person in the family gets treated like a resource instead of a human being. He's not wrong. And the strange thing is, I didn't feel strong in that moment back then. I felt tired, exhausted, like I was drowning in my own silence. But strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just whispers, no more. Now I live on my own. Terms: I cook meals I actually enjoy. I sleep in on Sundays. I started writing again, not for anyone else, just for me. Short stories, journal entries, scattered thoughts. I even signed up for a pottery class last week. The instructor smiled when I introduced myself and said, "Nice to meet you." And I realized it was the first time in a long while someone met me without already expecting something from me. It felt revolutionary. I'm not angry anymore, not bitter, not even numb. I'm just finally done with explaining, justifying, shrinking. I've let go. Let go of being the good son, if that meant being a silent one. Let go of the idea that family loyalty means tolerating disrespect. Let go of the belief that love must be proven through self-reuse. That doesn't mean it never hurt, but healing isn't pretending it didn't happen. Healing is building a life where it never happens again. If Melanie ever does reach out with truth in her hands instead of performance, maybe I'll answer. And if my parents ever say, "We were wrong," maybe I'll listen. But I won't go back, because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who made you doubt your worth. Ray curls at my feet as I finish writing this. Outside, the wind shifts. Not cold, not warm, just real, like the life I'm finally living. And I want to say this, if someone out there needs to hear it. You are not selfish for walking away. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not broken for wanting peace. You are allowed to stop being everything for everyone and start being everything for yourself. And if anyone calls you dramatic, selfish, ungrateful, just remember they always say that when their control stops working.